Hi, welcome to the Tsang Associates. This is Joseph. Today we have Nicholas with us. It is a crazy day. There's a new travel ban that just went into effect on China specifically because of the coronavirus. This is just coming out as we speak. Nicholas, we were going to shoot a video talking about CBP. We just met with the directors at the airport, figuring out how can people come in with different issues. Well, now this is the biggest issue. People from China cannot enter the U.S. starting Sunday. Now, if you're a U.S. citizen, if you are a lawful permanent resident, I think if you're an immediate family member of a U.S. citizen, you can still come in. You just have to get quarantined. And if you came from Wuhan, China, you will get mandatory quarantine for 14 days. If you come from other parts of China, Beijing, Shanghai, anywhere else, maybe Hong Kong, arguably, since Hong Kong is part of China, you probably will get a 14-day quarantine as well, but it won't be as mandatory. It won't be specifically at the location. But everyone else, everybody other than the U.S. citizens, everybody other than lawful permanent residents and family members, they will not be able to enter the U.S. It is insane. Once the U.S. starts doing this, I think other countries are going to follow suit. What do you make of this thing?
Well, you're thinking, as we talked about before, hundreds of thousands of students, hundreds of thousands of non-immigrant visa holders on H-1Bs, which is kind of the building block of the employment-based immigration visa world. Not to mention intercompany transfers like those on Ls. I mean, imagine you are on an investment visa of some kind. And you're going about your business. Maybe it's been taking months, maybe even more than a year. And all of a sudden, because of this, maybe they say, sorry, all of that work. As we've seen time and time again with this administration, whether it's somebody on a PhD that happens to be from a Muslim-based country, all it takes is something like this or somebody's idea, and all of a sudden, potentially, we're going to just say no questions asked.
Now, before we kind of dive into it and talk about it more, what's super crazy about this specific situation is that once the U.S. implements this, other countries are going to follow suit.
It makes sense from the standpoint of, and we've seen this before, I'm looking at some documents about, smallpox issues, 50 years ago, and things being very similar to this. And we've always treated communicable diseases as a grounds to really limit people's egress into the United States. So it really is understandable. And even at as you said, we were at a liaison meeting with CBP officials here at LAX in Los Angeles. And, they're dealing with this too. And the constant changing, the fear. And once that fear really grabs hold, then it just becomes, I'm sorry, because of the way you look or where you're coming from in the world. We're not going to let you in.
I mean, I totally understand from a health public standpoint because there's so many things unknown about this particular virus. Now we know that it transmits between people, and you don't even have to be in Wuhan to have contracted this particular virus. And right before the outbreak, tons of people have left Wuhan, left China, and so any foreign national that has been in China, not just Wuhan, for the past 14 days, now will not be able to enter the U.S.
Question, wasn't it just something called Lunar New Year not too long ago?
This is huge. This is the biggest travel event for China. And actually, I want to make a case. It's Asian culture. Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, not just China itself. Everybody is flying back from all around the world to go back to their home. And then after 1 week or 2 weeks, then they fly back out. So a lot of people who were in the U.S. on student visas, H-1B, L-1, they all flew back to China, meet with their executives, and meet with their family. And then now they need to come back, but now they can't. Before we kind of go on, because there's a lot of things that we want to talk about, cover, so many different issues and things are developing. The number one thing we want people to know is this won't go into effect until Sunday. If you can, right now, Friday, tomorrow, if you need to come back for whatever reason, if you're on H-1B or you're on OPT and you need to come back on H-1B to file for in March 1st, if you didn't know, it's March 1st this year, it's March 1st, get on a plane, come back. I know a lot of flights have already canceled all the flights. It's triple the price from what I've been told to get a flight. But it's cheaper to fly to Canada or Mexico because they haven't blocked the flights yet, and then you can get a transfer and then come in, because this effect won't go into effect until Sunday.
And that in February 2nd, Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh my God.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
You're really looking at kind of an event where, and as we're getting more, kind of more news at the moment, we too, as practitioners, as attorneys, as family members, we're really trying to make sense of what is a crisis. And again, what's interesting about this, Joseph, is that it does make sense in the abstract. You have an unknown virus that is killing people coming from a very particular part of the world. Across the board, it makes sense. We want to be mindful. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we know that, just because you look a certain way, or just because you were, maybe just got back from a trip, that doesn't mean that you're carrying this virus, that you're contagious or anything like that. And so like you had indicated, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, if somebody could be affected by this travel ban because they're not a green card holder, they're not a U.S. citizen, they are on a student visa, on some type of employment visa,
right,
you may need to kind of make a rash decision, come to the United States by any means necessary, and kind of wait this out while you're here.
Yeah, so we just got news of this. Sanya from The Times just reported this at 5:28 p.m. That Delta, American Airlines, grounding all flights, suspending all flights from the U.S. to China, and then specifically China has grounded flights from three different continents. So this is huge. All the airline industry is in sync with this particular news. It's hard for people to get to China, and it's hard for people to get out of China as of this point. So it's going to be quite difficult. And the crazy thing about this is people who are on L1, and an L1 visa, for your information, is executive transferee visas. These are executives of Sony company, executive of major, huge company Toyota, and they are managing hundreds of employees in the U.S., and they need to come to the U.S. They got transferred over, and their case already got approved. They already waited a whole year, and their approval might be only a year. Their approval might only last a year or 2 years to run the company in the U.S., and after their term is ended, they're going to fly back. Now, all these companies who's waiting for their leader to come can't. It's so interesting how things are happening. There are more news?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think as we've seen in this administration, and just, not to mention as far as immigration-related issues, the public charge rule that just kind of is going into effect at the end of February as well. I mean, if you are in the immigration space, if you're coming and going from the United States as somebody on a work visa, a student visa, you're on some type of visa to come see family, friends, etc. I mean, the entire system, as we know it, seems to be almost at a standstill. And what was quote unquote easy is no longer easy. What was hard may be impossible.
Right.
And so it really is, and as new information comes in, it's kind of like the administration and our leadership is flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it is companies, executives, families,
everything
that is going to really feel the brunt of what that means.
Weddings, funerals. I mean, wedding season is around the corner. February, March, April.
Oh, yeah.
This ban might be in place for 3 months, 6 months, a whole year.
Months. Oh, yeah.
We know the coronavirus vaccine is being developed by different countries around the world. Some say they've already got it and they're going through testing, but we know how testing goes. You first start with animals, and then it goes to human, and then it goes into mass production. And after mass production, who knows how many people will be infected by the time they finally have something ready. And the vaccine has to catch up to the number of people getting infected, right? If people are getting infected at an exponential rate, which is happening right now, and the vaccine is being developed, one by one, it might be a disaster. I mean, I totally understand from a public health standpoint. Not saying the U.S. is doing the wrong thing. It totally makes sense. It's just insane that this is happening. It's blowing up to this proportion.
And I think why we felt it was important to jump on, even as we're kind of ingesting and digesting the new information as it comes in, is because, if you're watching this from around the world, if your life is tied up with the ability to come and go, you really have to think long and hard. If you haven't talked to somebody, you need to talk to somebody. You need to talk to immigration attorneys that know as much as we can know at this point.
So many people are affected, right? Anybody who is a U.S. citizen, a family member of a U.S. citizen, a lawful permanent resident, they will be quarantined when they fly back. And getting a flight, that itself will be very difficult. And from our experience, and we know this, airlines, they are the first line of defense. They don't want to board anybody who will cause problem for them. So a lot of times, maybe you have the right, maybe you're a U.S. citizen or you're a permanent resident, and you have the right to come into the U.S. You will just be quarantined. You might not be able to find an airline that will permit you to fly. And these airlines, if they board one person that's wrong, it would be a $5,000 fine, and they wouldn't get the priority in the terminals. That's their punishment. We've seen tons of cases where people don't have the right documentation in the past, right? We're not even talking about coronavirus. We're talking about people who have an expired green card, and they have a 10-year green card, but they're permitted to enter. Airlines don't understand that. They block them, and now we need to contact the airline. As immigration attorneys, our job to represent these clients, we contact the airline, we get them the ticket so they can fly in. And then we train the client to explain the law to the CBP officer at the airport so that they are able to come in. So that's before coronavirus. This is something you were saying earlier. We talk in lingo about life before 9/11 and after. Now we're kind of talking about life before the coronavirus.
Potentially, absolutely.
This is a new era.
And to the idea that something so dramatic can have this massive, ripple effect, and on a dime things change. People get sick, things happen.
Right.
What if this becomes a new normal where we're now opening and shutting all borders for the sake of fear and concern about, in this case, it's about health, but as we've seen with other bans, travel bans, and they just extended, right?
Yeah.
The traditional travel ban that we've seen, the Muslim ban that we call it,
right?
It becomes easier to say, we're closed.
The people that this is going to affect are not only China nationals, it's any foreign national outside of the U.S. who's been to China.
Oh, yeah.
So we know tons of executives from Japan, Italy, Singapore that flew to China in the past couple of days, and flew, like tons of Chinese immigrants. They also have a Canadian passport.
Oh, yeah.
So Canadians who flew to China for Chinese New Year and flying back out now can't enter the U.S.
It's almost like a movie, right? You have this cultural event in and around Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, and coincidentally you have this massive virus.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, we kind of close up shop.
Yeah.
And so you almost couldn't have scripted this any better.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about the remedies, right? What can people do? So if you're a U.S. citizen, if you're a lawful permanent resident, immediate family member that needs to come back, and you've been in China for the past 14 days, trying to get an airplane ticket is going to be very difficult. And second, after you come in, the CBP officer allowing you to come in will be difficult. And then I don't even know how the quarantine thing will be set up, but I'm sure it will be.
Well, again, to your point, if this is something that was rolled out on a Friday afternoon for us on the West Coast, potentially there will be some reaction time and maybe some wiggle room, right? Potentially not all airlines have grounded every flight in any direction around the world. So maybe you do need to get a little bit creative, right? We are advocating for people who otherwise would be able to come back to the States no problem. We're advocating you start being creative, especially if your life is not going to be able to be put on hold because of responsibilities and obligations. And so fortunately, it's a big world, a lot of airports, a lot of places to get around.
Right.
And I would definitely, like you said, if you're watching this, maybe, and you need to get back, maybe you start being creative with your options to be able to get on a flight. Or for what I'm reading in this article from Market Watch, it says that there are going to be 7 airports they dedicate all flights from China. Yeah, JFK, Chicago, O'Hare, San Francisco, Seattle, Tacoma, Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta, LAX, and Honolulu as these kind of seemingly destination airports. But as we know, there's already, I think, a group of 30 that flew in yesterday or today that have been quarantined for some time, right?
That's right.
And who knows, maybe that will be the test case for what we see in the preceding weeks.
Let's talk a little bit about the heightened security measures. So the World Health Organization and the U.S. Department of State just issued that is a level 4 warning, basically saying do not travel to China. So now, once the World Health Organization as well as the U.S. makes a statement like this, other countries are going to follow suit. So people are going to stop going there, and then planes are going to be grounded, and people are not going to be able to fly out. That is one way to kind of almost quarantine China,
Or
right?
almost, yeah,
China
neutralize
quarantined Wuhan, the city, and then the second thing they did, which is by far the biggest quarantine in history. First, that's the local quarantine of that major city hub. More people there than in all of Australia. It's insane. And then all the surrounding cities got quarantined,
And
then now the entire country. Right, from the world community.
It's interesting, right? Imagine something here in the States happening in Nebraska, in Lincoln, Nebraska,
right.
and all of a sudden you in Miami can't get a flight.
Exactly, yeah. And there's 1 billion people in China.
In the country, not to mention expats, not to mention
That's right.
Chinese nationals living abroad.
So, and all these people have flown back. And, if you compare the ratio, the chances of getting that virus is so small, but we're taking no chances, right? U.S. is not taking any chances. Other countries really shouldn't, because there's so many unknown, right? If we know that you will get a virus, but you might just get sick for a couple of days and there's a vaccine, you could go to Walgreens and you get it. Well, not that big of a deal. It will suck, but this draconian measure is really to protect the safety and the public safety of all mankind.
Oh yeah. Well, and you know what? Look forward to potentially doing another one of these in a week or two when we have more information, and potentially it's good information, as opposed to we're not only building walls in the southern border, but we're now building invisible walls in our ports, in our airports, and hopefully you didn't have any travel plans, Joseph.
No, not
all right, neither did I. So that's beneficial.
Yeah, if you are a foreign national, if you're a non-immigrant abroad, and you need to come back to the U.S., your visa was already approved. Your life is now put on standstill. What's the next step? For example, people who are on L1, you only get it for 1 year or 2 years, and you're supposed to, in that short amount of time, build your company up from zero, startup, to a international company with tons of employees, revenue, and assets. Capture the market share, execute your genius business plan, etc. Well, suddenly all this got put on standstill. What happened 2 years from now? How do you apply for a visa then? And what should you do about your company? Tons of my clients right now is saying, well, should I lay off all my employees, right? Because if I'm not there, I cannot direct them, and they cannot go get clients. And so should I just fire all of them? And what would? But if I do, then the company would be essentially reduced down to zero. Should I cancel my lease?
I mean, these are million, if not billions of dollars worth of decisions that have to be made.
Right.
Well, and I would say, Joseph, thinking it kind of almost from the outside, to the idea of what people can do, again, on top of staying healthy, taking care of yourself wherever you are, right? Don't get sick. Think about it very practically. All right, well, I'm here. I'm stuck. But maybe I can, whatever relationships I were developing, whatever contracts maybe were coming in, explain the situation and document it. Right? Document it.
Right.
Even as of today, making notes, emailing, and creating a paper trail.
Right.
In anticipation that you will get some pushback down the line.
Right.
So I think that's really astute advice. And when you have an office where you have dealt with these types of what was case by case and now becomes potentially across the board, I think you're in a very unique situation to be able to provide advice when other people just don't know what to say. And to the idea that we don't even know the extent of what's going to happen, how this may affect. We could be talking about this for the next 10 years. Jeez. Regardless of how long this actually is happening on the ground.
Right. Yeah. It's tough.
Well, I mean, as new information comes in, we'll continue to put it out there. Continue to try to be a resource of information. And if there are questions, concerns, definitely reach out, comment, email, WhatsApp, WeChat, text, because
all of them. Kakao. I mean, you can't miss that.
I mean, information is power, and right now, the last thing you want to do is make a decision based on either inaccurate information or outdated information.
Or just emotion, just out of pure fear, just fired everyone. That's terrible. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it was a pleasure, Joseph.
Okay, thank you.
Until next time.
Yeah, take care.
Of
Appreciate
course,
it.
thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.